A single torch sputtered in its iron bracket, licking shadows across the damp stones of the black cell. Eddard Stark lay awake on the straw, eyes fixed upon that fickle flame, as though it alone tethered him to the realm of the living. Pain throbbed along the poorly knit bones of his leg, fever pulsed behind his temples. Yet the ache that consumed him came not from shattered flesh, but from memory. Arya's bright laughter in the training yard, Sansa's hopeful smile before the tourney, Robb's quiet resolve at 14 summers, Bran's shrill whoop from the broken tower, Rickon trailing Shaggy Dog through winter-brittle snow, and Catelyn, whose grief he felt like phantom fingers around his throat. He swallowed, forcing breath through cracked lips. He must hold to purpose. If he surrendered to despair, the fire in that torch would gutter, and so too would the north. Footsteps echoed beyond the arch. Slow, deliberate, soft-souled. No jangling keys, no clink of steel. They stopped before his door. A hiss of metal rasped, and the iron slit slid free. "Lord Eddard," whispered a voice he knew, though its owner wore many faces. Riotly. The door sighed inward. Beyond stood Varys, draped in plain brown robes instead of his usual silk. The smell of smoke and tallow heavy upon him. A jailer lay slumped beside the threshold, breathing shallowly. Eyes rolled white beneath lids fluttering in forced sleep. Ned struggled to his feet, leaning on the wall. "Why?" he asked, voice ragged. "This will damn you." "I was damned the day I was cut," Varys replied, guiding him forward. "But the realm is not yet lost." He pressed a twisted length of cloak cloth into Ned's hands. "Walk, my lord. Every moment risks another patrol." They crept along worm-carven corridors, guided by knots of dim lantern light. Twice they halted while red cloaks marched past, their casual laughter echoing against wet walls, swords slapping against greaves. Ned's pulse hammered, each step jarred his leg, but Varys' hand beneath his elbow steadied him. At length they reached a servant's stair corkscrewing upward. "Your jailer?" Ned rasped. "Dream wine," Varys murmured. "He will wake, believing himself drunk on stolen arbor gold." He ushered Ned through a narrow postern that bled a thin moonlit wind across their cheeks. The city lay below, an ocean of rooftops, chimneys smoking against a chilly autumn sky. Bells called the hour from distant spires. Flea Bottom flickered with lantern fire. In the yard beneath the salt storehouse, a covered cart waited between casks. Its driver glanced up, revealing a freckled face beneath a hood. A face Ned recognized from corridors of the Red Keep. Jean Poole, once Sansa's companion. "Lord." She whispered, eyes shining with fear and fierce determination alike. Varys bundled Ned into the cart, laying sacks of onions and old burlap over him. "Do not move," he warned. "Whisper only when you must." He turned to Jean. "Straight to the mud gate. The night is ours if we keep ahead of dawn." The cart rumbled forward, wheels creaking, horse snorting in the chill. Through a tear in the burlap, Ned watched torchlit alleys slide past. Rats scattered. Somewhere a drunk sang of fair maidens and sour wine. The pace quickened. Ned forced slow breaths, mind racing like winter storm over the godswood. If he escaped the city, what then? Lannister wrath would fall upon his daughters left behind. Sansa still languished in the Red Keep. Arya? No one knew. Perhaps she fled. Gods protect her quick feet. He clenched a fist, pain lancing from cracked knuckles. The wolf in him howled for his young. At the mud gate, the cart halted before a half-dozing sergeant clutching a pike. "What's this?" "Leaks for the morning soup kitchens," Jane said, voice low but steady. She tossed a coin, bronze glinting. The sergeant caught it out of reflex. "Leaks," he muttered, waving them through. The portcullis rattled. Hooves clopped on wooden planks of the drawbridge. Then they were beyond, candle specks of merchant camps scattered outside the walls. The river black and wide beyond. At a fisher's pier, the cart stopped. A skiff bobbed, oars muffled in straw dacha. Two men stood silhouetted, one short and spare, the other broad as an ox. When Ned emerged, breath frosted in the air. The broader man knelt, pressing fist to heart. "Lord Stark, by my axe I never thought I'd see you again." It was Jory's cousin, Tomard, tears shining in his beard. The short man handed Ned a cloak of drab wool. "The river carries secrets quicker than ravens," he said. "Varys again, though distance and night masked his girth. Blackwater rushes seaward. So must you. Past Driftwood Hall, you'll find a fisher named Bressa.ca. She will ferry you to a smuggler's cove where a ship waits, crew sworn to House Stark and Silver both." He hesitated, expression softening. "Lord Eddard, there is peril beyond these waters. Armies gather. Dragons stir in the east. But the north remains the north, if its heart endures. Liv and Winterfell may yet stand." Ned clasped the eunuch's arm. "You have done more for my children than I have strength to thank." Varys withdrew. "Then do not thank me. Serve the realm when the realm has need." He faded into the mist, footsteps gone like candle smoke. They rode beneath a veil of cloud. Moonlight silvered the ripples, pale reeds whispering on either bank. Pain gnawed Ned's side, but the river's clean chill steadied his mind. Memories surfaced. He and Benjen racing skiffs on the White Knife. Sir Roderick laughing until his great mustaches shook, Catelyn waving from the ramparts. Each image stoked his resolve. He would return. The current bore them east, toward the sea and the promise of salt-crusted winds. Dawn found them at a narrow estuary where gulls wheeled over brackish flats. Bressa waited with her punt, face wrinkled like dried kelp, yet eyes sharp. "Climb in, Lord Stark." Tides turning. She ferried them to a rocky spit where a single-masted carrack rode anchor, sails furled. Its name, North's Memory, had been scraped free, leaving plank scars. Tomard steadied Ned onto the deck and bowed. "I take my leave. South winds call me home." Ned gripped his shoulder. "Tell Catelyn. Tell Robb I live." As Tomard pushed off, Ned met the eyes of the carrack's captain. A woman no older than Arya, hair bound in a leather tie. "Captain Mara Stone," she said. "Washed Northmen make for strange cargo, but I'll see you safe." She gestured below where blankets and broth waited. Ned lowered himself down, grateful for the warm dark. The ship slipped into open sea under dawn's blush. Salt spray whipped through broken rails. The deck creaked like an old man's groan. Ned rested against a barrel of smoked haddock, watching gulls fade into haze. South and east, war brewed. He could feel it in the bite of the air. Yet for the first time since his capture, hope threaded his pulse. He was free, and Westeros stretched before him like a game board fresh set for play. And now. Jon Snow leaned on the ramparts of Eastwatch by the sea, wind tugging black curls across his brow. Whitecaps shattered against the cliffs below, sending salt mist spiraling up the stone. Ghost stood beside him, fur ruffling, red eyes fixed upon the gray horizon. Beyond lay a restless sea, and beyond that, unknowable threats. Jon exhaled, watching his breath mingle with the chill. Ravens had flown in from Winterfell bearing scant news. Robb marshaled bannermen. Catelyn rode south to treat with the Riverlords. Sansa remained hostage in the capital, Arya missing. Of his father no letter spoke. Silence hung like fog. Behind him, the wall shimmered beneath thin sunlight, glacial blues dancing in fissures. Samwell Tarly puffed up the stair, cheeks flushed. "Maester Aemon wishes you below," he said between breaths. A blackbird arrived. From White Harbor, marked urgent. Jon followed, boots clacking on icy steps. In the rookery, Maester Aemon waited beside a restless raven. Its leg tube bore wax stamped with a direwolf's head. Jon's fingers trembled as he broke the seal and unrolled the scrap. "Jon, I live. Keep faith. Gather the true and the just. Winter is nearly upon us, and with it, the ancient darkness." Eddard Stark. The parchment blurred as Jon blinked away stunned tears. Alive? His father lived? Ghost pressed a cold nose to his hand, sensing the quake within him. Jon felt the wall's chill fade beneath a rising hearth warmth. Ned Stark breathed still. The world had tilted. Maester Aemon rested a gnarled hand on Jon's arm. Hope is a rare visitor at Eastwatch, the old man murmured. Cherish it, but do not let it blind you. Jon folded the note. He calls us to assemble the true and just. I'll ride for Castle Black tonight, speak with Lord Commander Mormont. The Watch cannot march south, yet White Walkers do not heed borders. Perhaps Father's warning is for more than crowns. Sam swallowed. You believe the darkness is that? Darkness? Jon nodded toward the wall's shimmering face. I do. Ah. In a root-choked hollow deep within the Riverlands, a girl dressed in crusted leathers crouched over a creek, washing wolf blood from her fingers. Her blade, a thin Bravosi stiletto, lay across her knees. She scrubbed until her hands shook, then plunged her face into the water, letting the cold bite her skin. When she rose, droplets clung to lashes as fierce gray eyes scanned the thicket. Arya Stark had learned to look everywhere at once, lessons paid for in bruises and buried names recited each night. Beside her squatted Gendry, studying a rabbit snare they had placed. 2 hares this morning, he said, proud. Hot pile think the gods have turned bakers. Arya forced a tight smile. Let's return before Lami whines. She sheathed her blade, though never dulled its edge. The free company they joined, ragged orphans called the Gutterbound, tracked south toward River Run, raiding Lannister foragers. Few among them knew the face beneath Arya's grime. Fewer still would cross her if they did. Rumors called her Shade, the girl with ghost wolf eyes. That evening they camped beneath twisted oaks. Arya sat apart, oiling needle, mind wandering north. She pictured Winterfell aglow with hearthlight, smelled fresh-baked bread, felt the cold kiss of Godswood air. She missed Jon fiercely, his quiet honor. She missed her father's broad hand ruffling her hair. Dead, they said. Yet her heart refused to believe. Some morning she woke sure she'd heard his voice turning through dreams. She whispered silent prayers to the old gods, voice trembling though she willed it strong. As embers dimmed, footsteps approached. A weathered woman wrapped in patchwork furs squatted beside her. Nymeria Waters, called the Sparrowhawk. Eyes glinting like flint. You fight like a north wind, she said. S-word dance on mud. Arya kept polishing. Is that praise? Caution. The woman's gaze flicked to the dark. When steel sings too brightly, shadows heed the tune. You hide something heavy. One day, it will claim its due. Arya met her stare, voice low. Let it. I have debts yet unpaid. Nymeria's smile was thin as a razor. Then keep your edge keen, little shade. She rose and melted into gloom. Later, Arya tucked needle beneath her roll, and listened as wind hissed through leaves. Names drifted across her lips. Joffrey, Cersei, Ilan Payne, Meryn Trant. She hesitated, breath-catching, and whispered one final name she could not forget. Sandor Clegane. Gendry murmured in sleep beside her. The fire crackled. She shut her eyes, fighting tears she refused to shed. She would find her family again. She would. Anyway. Grey-Gen Umber's laughter shook the feast hall of Moat Cailin as barrels of ale rolled in. Robb Stark returned the grin, yet his shoulders bore unfamiliar weight. Banners of Talhart, Hornwood, and Glover fluttered from the rafters. Oaths sworn at the boy Lord's summons, called by word of Lannister treachery. But war chilled the marrow of Moat Cailin, even as the hall roared. Scouts spoke of gold cloaks, reinforcing Harrenhal, of Tywin's legions, breaking Riverland lines. Ravens brought whispers of wildfire stockpiled beneath King's Landing. And Sansa, his sweet sister, remained a prisoner. As the feast tempered into somber talk, Robb withdrew to the inner keep. There he found Catelyn pacing before a hearth, a crumpled letter in hand. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. Your father lives, he said, voice raw. A message reached White Harbor, smuggled on a fisher's knot. Ned escaped the capital. Robb's breath left him in a rush. Relief surged, then dread. Alive? Where is he? Sailing north, perhaps. I cannot know. But if he reaches us, our banners must stand ready. The North will look to him." She folded the letter. "And so will every enemy who learns of it." Robb knelt, gripping the arms of her chair. "Father taught me to protect family above honor. We ride south to free Sansa, to break the Lannisters, whatever the cost." "Dan?" "Oh." Catelyn smoothed his hair, though her hand trembled. "We will ride, my son, but we must move with care. Bannermen muster still. Karstark drags his hosts from the lonely hills and Manderley from the neck. Give them weeks." "Weeks," Robb echoed, tasting the word like sour milk. Each passing day Sansa knelt under the lion's paw. Yet he nodded. Winterfell's heart beat once more. Then Stark lived. That truth might rally 10,000 swords. Nandaru. Storm clouds bruised the sky above Shipbreaker Bay as the North's memory limped toward White Harbor. Ned stood at the prow, salt caked in his beard, leg bound tight. Cries of gulls greeted them. Towers of the Seagate rose like white fangs. Between them, the Manderley banner, Merman trident bearing, snapped in the storm wind. Mera called commands, and sailors hauled lines, steering toward the harbor. On the dock Cobb, Manderley waited, draped in heavy sealskin, lamp raised. His eyes widened at the sight of Ned descending the plank. "By the 7, he breathed, then bowed low. "Lord Stark, all White Harbor stands at your service." Ned clasped the man's forearms. "Send ravens, quietly, to Robb at Moat, Cailin, to Catelyn wherever she rides. We muster at Winterfell." He scanned the harbor's lantern-studded expanse. "And prepare ships. Grain, arms, timber. Winter marches with us." Cobb nodded, urgency overtaking astonishment. "Ate once." That night Ned dined in Manderley's round tower. The fare, steaming mussels, crusty bread, strong beer, tasted of homecoming. Yet each bite carried iron tang of duty. He envisioned Robb bearing a sword too heavy for youth, Catelyn devouring roads with restless hooves, Jon braving northern chaos, Arya carved of storm and shadow. He must knit them together before the realm unraveled. Candlelight flickered on a woven map spread across the oaken table. Ned traced lines. The King's Road dividing Wolflands from Lion. The twins perched over the neck, Riverlands bleeding at every vein. Lannister might commanded roads south, but the rivers could choke an army if held. He marked strategic fords, scribbled sigils of friendly and foe. Then he moved a small stone wolf north of the wall. "Jon," he whispered, as though his son might hear across snow and sea. "Hold fast." For hours he planned until wax pooled white as snowdrifts. Finally Mera rapped on the door, carrying a satchel damp with seawater. Within lay a fresh inked scroll bearing Castle Black's marked out guide. Ned unrolled it, heart stuttering. Jon's hand. "Father, the wall hears your call. I keep faith. Light burns dim but unbroken. Gather the true, and I will meet you where ice and fire converge." On snow. Ned closed his eyes, tears hot and swift. A vow stronger than steel bound father and son across the wild distance. Hope, fragile as first frost, spread through his veins. Tomorrow, he would ride for Winterfell. Tomorrow, he would summon bannermen, beat drums, unsheathe ancient blades. But tonight, for one brief moment, he allowed himself to feel the quiet grace of reunion promised. Ghosts of hardship lingered outside the window. War, winter, death. But inside, the heart of the North began to beat anew. Enderu. Far to the west, a raven battered against driving rain. Wings sodden. It landed on a ruined tower where a lone cloaked figure watched bonfires blaze along the King's Road. Lightning revealed half a face hidden beneath a hood, deep scar cutting from brow to jaw, eye black as coal. Sandor Clegane read the message tied to the bird's leg. Word of Stark's survival. A grim chuckle rumbled in his chest. The stag's dead, the wolf howls, and lions still think they rule the wood. He tossed the parchment into the fire pit where it curled into cinders. Below, rubble shifted. The boy, Polliver's squire, whimpered as chains bit his wrists. Clegane kicked the lad's boot. "Saddle the horses." "Where are we bound?" the boy asked, voice shaking. "North," the hound growled, flames reflecting in his single eye. "Toward trouble." He flung a cloak across broad shoulders, rain sizzling upon heated mail. "When wolves gather, the smart beasts keep distance." "Me? I fancy a better look." He strode into the storm, laughter lost in thunder. And somewhere, miles of mud and ice away, Arya Stark shivered without knowing why. One. Dawn gilded the godswood of White Harbor, its heart tree pale beneath crimson leaves. Ned knelt before the weirwood, hands clasped, and whispered ancient verse. Wind rustled branches overhead, and for the first time since King's Landing the oppressive weight upon his soul eased. He placed his palm against the carved face. The wood felt warm, as though blood beat within. "Watch over them," he said, "to the old gods, to the new, to whatever listened. Guide Jon on the wall, guard Arya's steps. Shield Sansa in the lion's den. Grant Robb wisdom and Catelyn strength." Leaves whispered like distant voices. Ned rose, squared shoulders, and limped from the grove. Beyond, White Harbor roused to clamoring bells and the clatter of hooves. Men hurried with crates of salted cod. Smiths hammered rivets, women bound arrows. A city girding for winter and war. Cobb Manderley met him at the courtyard. "Ravens fly south," he said. "Your bannermen answer. Karstark rides day and night. Deepwood's longships crowd the bight. Umber marches with 5,000. Ned exhaled. "Send word to those still wavering. I call banners not for vengeance alone, but for the living. The great war comes, ice and death. If we stand divided, all fall." Cobb's gaze sharpened. "You speak of snows beyond the wall. I speak of the shadow my brother Benjen followed into the forest and never returned. Of the tales old Nan whispered while fires guttered low." Ned's voice dropped. "I have seen things in dreams, blue eyes. The wall holds them. For now. But stone crumbles, and ice melts before dragonfire." Cobb crossed his chest with trembling fingers. "Then let the white knife rise red with Lannister blood first, and we'll worry on ghosts after." Ned clasped his arm. "We fight them both, Lord. Steel and snow, lion and dark. Gather your courage, and the north will not break." Now, trumpets sounded. Riders galloped through the gate, bearing the direwolf on sable banner. The vanguard of Winterfell had arrived. Ned strode to meet them. Cloak snapping and sunlight struck his graying hair like a crown. Voices broke into cheers. "Stark! Stark!" reverberating off stone walls. Tears blurred his vision, though he kept his chin high. He mounted a waiting horse and lifted his sword, ice's great length reforged into a weight he alone could carry. "To Winterfell," he called, voice rolling across the courtyard. "To family, duty, honor, and to the dawn." The words rang like hammer on anvil, and the people answered with a roar that shook gulls from the battlements. As columns spilled onto the King's Road, Ned Stark rode at their head. A wolf escaped the lion's snare, scarred but unbowed. Southward lay a kingdom riven by greed. Northward towered an icy apocalypse few yet believed. Between them marched one man determined to hold fast against both. And across field and forest, river and mountain, his children. Arya the Shadow Wolf, Jon the Watcher, Robb the Young Lord, felt the pull of his purpose like a lodestar in the night. The Game of Thrones had set its pieces. But in the looming storm, a greater contest stirred. One that cared nothing for crowns. Ned Stark understood now. Everything he loved, all that remained of honor, must unite or perish. So he rode, cloak billowing like a banner of winter, toward a future written in blood, ice, and stubborn, unyielding hope. A-K-S-Q-L. Cold dawn mist drifted over the white knife as Ned Stark's column creaked across the river bridge. Wagons groaned beneath barrels of grain and hammered shields. Shaggy Garrons snorted, breath pluming like smoke. The trees along the banks glimmered bronze and russet, their leaves already thinning under the encroaching bite of early winter. Ned rode at the fore beside Sir Roderick and Maester Lewin, both fetched south from their brief refuge in White Harbor, while Galbart Glover and Lady Mage Mormont led the van. Glints of light winked across spearheads in the endless procession stretching behind them, a silent promise of the North's determination. Every village they passed erupted in startled cheer. Crofters knelt in muddy lanes, offering bread still warm from ash ovens. Old men pressed gnarled fists to hearts. Mothers lifted infants so the Lord of Winterfell might bless them with a touch to the brow. Ned accepted each gesture with grave courtesy, but the sight of so many young faces stirred equal parts pride and dread. He had marched through these same hamlets as a boy under his father's banner, fingers itching for glory. Now he carried only fears. Fears for the wall, for his scattered children, for the realm itself splintering under greed, while a harsher doom gathered in the far north unseen. At midday they halted upon a wind-swept rise where the King's Road cut straight as a tourney lance toward the neck. Cook fires sprang up, and the scent of mutton stew wove among the tents. Ned dismissed attendants and sat alone on a flat stone, leg throbbing despite fresh poultices. Across the camp Lady Mormont haggled with the quartermaster, her booming voice carrying over the clang of smiths resetting rivets. He closed his eyes, letting the din fade, and listened for the sound of godswood leaves rustling in memory. A timid footstep broke his reverie. He opened his eyes to find a lean, red-haired boy in a patched cloak holding out a sealed cylinder. "Bird for you, m'lord," came on raven wings to Lady Hornwood's camp. Herr Maester said, "Fly it straight to your hand." Ned cracked the wolf seal. The parchment smelled of pine tar and lamp oil. Its words made his pulse hammer. "Father, we ride with 5,000 through the neck. Jojen Reed guides us over the causeways. Greywater may rise to meet you with twice that number. We march slow, to let the umbers catch us at Moat Cailin. You will not stand alone. Rob." Ned read it thrice, then folded the scrap and tucked it beneath his brigandine. Hope ached in his ribs, sharp as frostbite. Rob alive and commanding, not merely holding ground but forging an alliance with Cranagman sworn 2 centuries to solitude. He felt Catelyn's spirit in the words too, urging caution even while spurring speed. For a fleeting instant he heard Rob's boyish laugh ringing in Winterfell's yard, Bran chasing after on wobbly legs, Arya perched on the stable roof whistling for Nymeria's attention. That world seemed an age vanished, yet the embers still glowed. At dusk Sir Roderick joined him to report the watch rotations. The old knight's white whiskers fluttered in the wind, his single good eye narrowed with worry. Scouts brought tales of a Lannister outrider party shadowing the King's Road 3 leagues south. 20 riders only, but bold enough to take prisoners for information. "Ma'am, see. Have them caught in the dark," Ned said. "Send Mage with her she-bears. She'll relish the hunt." He clenched gloved fingers. "No banners, no songs. And remind the men, treat captives square. We are wolves, not butchers." Roderick saluted, fist on breastplate. "As you say, my lord." Sleep proved elusive. Ned lay beneath weather-stained canvas, listening to the sigh of wind across grass. Fires flickered beyond the tent seams. He traced the ridges of his mended leg, vowed again that no maester's salvo would slow him when his children called. He drifted at last into uneasy dreams. Icy forests where blue-eyed shadows prowled. A red keep corridor echoing Sansa's sobs. Arya sprinting along rooftops with a pack of silent wolves at her heels, until the camp horns shattered night and summoned them onward. 200 leagues north, the wall loomed beneath storm-heavy clouds. Jon Snow strode the edge of the icy precipice, while snow devils danced along the parapet. Below, the haunted forest waited, branches creaking like old timbers of a foundered ship. The chill bit through boiled leather gloves, yet sweat dampened his neck. The gravity of Maester Aemon's latest raven weighed heavier than any frost. The old maester's looping script still fluttered in Jon's thoughts. 7 outrider posts silent both horn and fire 5 days. Tracks unlike man or beast found near Long Barrow. White creatures glimpsed by torch south of the Milkwater. Wildlings speak of dead things walking beyond Frostfangs. Lord Commander Mormont's council gathered in the shield hall, breath fogging under the sooty rafters. Black brothers hunched over a pox-scarred map while torches guttered in iron sconces. Dolorous Ed cracked a joke no one heard. Corin Halfhand loomed like carved granite, one gauntlet resting on the bleak mountains painted east of the Weeping Pass. Jon stood among them, ghost pressed to his side, the direwolf's red gaze fixed upon the doorway, as if expecting nightmares to stride through at any moment. "We send a ranging at dawn," Mormont declared, voice gravel thickened by age. 2 strong. Halfhand leading east. Seratin withers west to Icemark. "Jon, you'll ride with Corin." "Aye, Lord Commander." Jon's heart thudded. Each ranging risked death, yet the wall could not remain blind. He thought of Robb's last letter delivered by Brother Post weeks before. Swords raised in the south. His mother riding river roads, and longed to join them. Duty bound him northward. The letter from his father lanced through him. Gather the true and just. He would gather what men of truth he could amongst the black cloaks, even if most thought the tales of others children scaremongering. The Halfhand believed, and that was enough. Corin pulled him aside when the council broke. "These tracks, no tread of man nor horse. We ride light, no cook wagons, no wallowing mules. You'll carry the second horn." His sun-blasted face betrayed nothing, yet the significance of the 2 blast horn lay clear. 1 for rangers returning, 2 for wildlings, 3 for others. No ranger in living memory had sounded 3. Jon swallowed. "If it comes to that," the Halfhand said, as though reading the fear behind Jon's eyes, "blow long and clear. Whatever follows will hear, but so will Castle Black. Better the wall forewarned than the watch asleep." Jon nodded. Beside him Ghost bared teeth in silence, hair bristling as though he scented doom curling unseen across frozen heights. That night Jon wrote by guttering candle, ink scratched across parchment. "Father, I ride before dawn beyond Skirling Pass. The wall is yours still. I pray Winterfell soon will be. Darkness creeps, but Ghost walks at my heel. I will meet you where ice and fire converge, or I will keep the fire should the ice prevail. Your blood strengthens me." He folded the letter, sealing it with Castle Black wax, and entrusted it to a sleepy novice maester who promised to find the swiftest raven. Then he leaned against Ghost's warmth, watched snow sift through cracks in the eaves, and let fragmented thoughts wander to Arya, wild, brave, and to Sansa's quiet songs. He whispered each name like an oath until sleep dragged him under. Hundreds of miles south, twilight-painted Riverlands towers amber. Catelyn Stark guided her palfrey through the outer gate, escorted by 50 men-at-arms, banners of Tully trouting beside Winterfell's grey direwolf. Sir Brynden Blackfish rode ahead, his expression a mask of wry fatigue as cheering small folk pressed forward, offering late-season apples and fistfuls of blue flowers. Edmure met them in the yard, eyes shadowed by fresh lines of worry. "I sent ravens to White Harbor when Maester Vyman confirmed Father's letter," he said, gripping Catelyn's wrists. "But news moves as slow as rivers run uphill. Have you word?" "Only that he marches home." Catelyn dismounted, wincing. Days in saddle left her back tight. "Robb draws the north into the neck. We must buy him time to reach Moat Cailin before Tywin crosses the Trident." Edmure kicked at gravel. "We hardly hold enough men to slow Tywin's vanguard. Never mind the host behind. His outriders raid as far west as Pink Maiden. Villagers whisper of lions stealing food stores by night. Then we must make every whisper cut." Catelyn scanned the courtyard. New barricades of sharpened palisades, kettles of pitch placed above murder holes, oxen dragged into hastily expanded granaries. River Run prepared for siege again. She thought of Sansa in King's Landing's gilded cage, and forbade tears. "Father lives," she murmured to the wind, as though Hoster could hear from his sickbed. "We must live long enough to stand beside him when winter falls." That evening, thunderheads massed beyond the tumblestone. Catelyn climbed to the rookery. Ravens croaked from perches, wings rustling like shifting papers. Maester Vyman dozed at a desk beneath the lantern. Catelyn selected a quill and penned lines of steel-edged resolve to Robb, to remind him no northern sword would strike alone. Then another to White Harbor, urging caution crossing the Barrowlands. Then a third, briefer still, addressed only to Snow, Castle Black, sealed not with Winterfell wax but plain black, for secrecy. She hesitated with the quill hovering. "Tell Jon his father marches. Tell him Arya may seek the Riverlands. Tell him she remembers the promise of cat's paws and long nights." She wrote none of it, closed the cylinder, and whispered a prayer as the raven flapped into the storm-laced dark. In the Rootway Forest, Arya Stark jerked awake at dawn when Nymeria Waters clamped a hand over her mouth. The older woman's eyes gleamed in the murky half-light. Urgent. Arya's hand darted for needle. Nymeria's other palm stilled it. "Scouts." She breathed against Arya's cheek. "South route. 10, maybe 15. Male glints red in the leaves." The woman released her and eased back into fern shadow. Arya nudged Gendry. The smith lad started, hand flying to the heavy mace that once served as a forge hammer. Around them the gutter-bound band roused, pupils dilating from sleep to steel. Hot Pie fumbled for his bread knife, face ghost pale. Lamy clutched a short spear far taller than himself. They had grown lean and hard these past weeks, but a company of hungry orphans couldn't outfight Lannister outriders in honest field. They had only speed and surprise, and the quicksand labyrinth of the forest. Arya signaled 2 sharp gestures taught by Nymeria. "Scatter, regroup east." And the band melted into underbrush silent as the whisk of an owl's wings. Morning fog draped branches, muffling every motion. Arya's pulse thundered in her ears as she slithered beneath a moss-veiled log. Through leaves she glimpsed the first rider. A tall knight, helm lion-crested, sword drawn. His horse picked gingerly along a deer path, nostrils flaring at unfamiliar scents. 9 others followed. Chain jingling. One lifted a horn. Arya tensed, recalling the sound that once summoned city guard against her father on Baelor's steps. Nymeria Waters stepped into the path without warning. Hood thrown back, braid of streaked silver hair swinging over furs. She raised both palms. "Lost, sir." Her voice rang almost playful. The lead knight yanked reins. "State your name." "Call me Sparrowhawk." Her gaze swept the line. "These woods belong to no crown, yet I guard them for hungry folk fleeing war's teeth. Turn south and you might ride unscathed." The lion helm tilted. "Hungry folk. Bandits is what I name you. We track rebels wearing wolf sigils. Have you seen such scum?" "No." Nymeria laughed. "Wolves are cleverer than lions. They know forests." She whistled once, sharp. Bows twanged. 2 riders screamed as shafts sprouted from armpits where plate gaped. Chaos burst. Horses reared, iron hooves cracking branches. Gendry exploded from bracken using his mace like a siege ram. Arya darted low, needles slicing hamstrings with surgical flicks. Blood-soaked loam. Hot metal stench mingled with wet leaves. Arya felt a savage joy bloom. Each movement precise, water dancer light. One knight dismounted, greatsword arcing. She ducked, stabbed behind the knee, rolled, severed a strap. He roared, stumbled. Gendry finished him with a hammer swing that crunched helm and skull alike. When silence returned, 4 Lannisters lay dead. 3 dying, 2 fled. The gutterbound gathered, panting. Hot Pie retched behind a stump. Arya wiped needle on moss, forcing her hand steady. Nymeria's gaze found her unreadable. "Quick steel," she said, "but sharper still is restraint. Remember." Arya nodded, though she scarcely understood. She scanned the fallen knights, claiming a dagger of fine Lannisport steel and a half-empty wineskin. Among the corpses lay a leather scrip sealed with a red wax lion. She slit it. Inside, a parchment. Orders from Sir Emery Lorch. Benwood, Crossing. Capture Stark girl rumored traveling with beggar band. Deliver alive. Her chest tightened. She folded the parchment small as a dying leaf and slipped it into her boot. The gutter-bound buried their dead foes beneath cairns of stone to appease woodland spirits, or to disguise evidence, no one said. Before they marched again, Arya approached Nymeria. The letter names a Stark girl. It might name 500 before winter's turn. Sparrowhawk answered, expression flat. Do you claim it? Arya's first lie formed and died upon her tongue. One girl does not an army make, nor does one wolf, Nymeria said. Yet let enough gather, and even dragons may bleed. She pressed a finger to Arya's brow. Hide your eyes. They burn too bright. That night, Arya knelt alone by a creek, and read the letter again until rain-blurred ink. Sansa hostage, father alive, Lannisters hunting her across every mile. She traced the lion seal, then cut it to ribbons. Somewhere ahead, Robb rallied Northmen. Somewhere far above, Jon watched by frozen ramparts. She was alone, but not alone. She was Arya Stark of Winterfell, and she would bring needle to every lion throat in her path. At Moat Cailin, gray banners snapped in relentless wind. The Causeway Fortress, 3 towers of misshapen stone sunk in bog, housed more men than it had since the last Spring King. Robb Stark, cloaked in shaggy direwolf pelts, studied marshland from the parapet beside Jojen Reed. Peat fires dotted distant ridges, where Crannog scouts signaled routes safe for heavy wagons. The sky moaned with migrating geese. Winter stank on their wings. Your father approaches Barrowton by now, Jojen said, his green eyes eerily calm. With him rides an echo of kings long sleeping beneath those barrows. Robb tightened his glove. Echoes don't swing swords, but they raise them. Jojen glanced. The lion roars nearer. My sister spies dust columns beyond the green fork. Tywin pushes the van hard. Then? Let him. Robb touched Grey Wind's head, the direwolf pressed against his thigh, fur rippling. The neck swallows armies. We'll bleed him every step, then close the jaws behind. Wars are won with blades and hopes, Jojen murmured. If either dulls, loss follows. Guard both. Robb almost smiled at the boy's riddles. He felt years older than his 17. Shoulders scar-lined. Sleep measured in heartbeats. Yet with every raven shuttling between White Harbor and Barrowton, his pulse steadied. Father alive, marching home. When the Stark wolf pack reunited, winter itself would hush. He descended stairs slick with moss to meet Lord Karstark and the Greatjon in the shield hall. A crude map of the neck sprawled across a trestle table. Reed trackers marked new sinkholes where carts already vanished. Umber bannermen argued for a direct charge. Robb listened, then traced a thin line skirting the Fever River. Tywin expects a frontal fight. We give him slog, bog blood without glory. Lord Karstark, hold the center within the reeds. Greatjon, take the right through Drowned Meadow. Hit, fade, hit again. Reed longbowmen on every hummock between. Mend. Greatjon cracked knuckles. Ay boy, if I drown in muck, I'll haunt you. Robb's smile cut like ice. You'll haunt every lion you drag down with you. They set the plans before dawn. Ravens flew, drums beat hollow on water's skin. By midday, the first Lannister outriders bogged knee-deep in sludge, arrows humming from unseen mists. Men cursed, horses screamed, the neck tightened around them like a noose woven of grass and specters. Meanwhile, Ned's host pushed along the Barrowlands, thousands strong. At passages, and hoarfrost, silvered cairns of forgotten kings. Nights grew bitter. Breath hung constant. At every fire, Scalds sang of Brandon the Builder and Bale the Bard, while smiths hammered spear points late into dark. Ned had walked tent rows, cloak trailing rhyme, lending quiet words where fear gnawed. He saw himself in the grim young recruits and wondered if they saw in him the legend sung by northern tongues. He felt no legend, only bone-deep weariness and determination tough as old leather. At last, the banner spires of Barrowton speared the horizon. Lady Dustin rode out to greet him, flanked by armored riders. Her smile cut warmer than he expected. "Lord Stark, your hall awaits. Though Barrow Hall's hearths burn pale next to Winterfell's, I pray the welcome suffices." Ned dismounted stiff-legged. "Your hospitality in these days holds more worth than gold." Inside, coats were shed, furs thawed, bread salt shared. Ned addressed the noble captains in the great chamber of chipped marble sarcophagi. He outlined Robb's battle within the neck, Jon's warnings from the wall, the cold terror beyond mortal armies. Many bristled at talk of walking dead. Others crossed themselves in silent prayer. Ned spoke until his throat rasped, until even skeptics stared transfixed by the gravity settling like snow upon mountains. "I ask not vengeance," he finished, voice echoing beneath vaulted stone. "I ask survival, for our children's children. The lion claws at our door while winter's true claws sharpen beyond the wall. We will answer both, or we will fall." He drew ice, its Valyrian steel shimmering blue in torchlight. "Swear beside this blade, as our forebears knelt in the snow age, that you will stand when the night grows deepest." One by one, lords bent knee, touching swords to the floor. Lady Mormont's rasp carried. "Here we stand." The chorus swelled until the chamber trembled. 3 days later, ravens burst from Moat Cailin. Tywin's van broken in bog sludge, lion banners trampled beneath ox carts set aflame. The north howled triumph into star-spattered sky. But Ned allowed no feast. War only started. The dead had yet to march. He ordered supplies doubled and riders ready to sweep round east flank toward the Dreadfort. Rumors set Ramsay Snow sharpening knives for whichever side looked weaker. Ned would not leave Bolton treachery to chance. Letters flew across Westeros faster than armies could tread. At Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon held court in a damp hall, shadows dancing from the Red Priestess's flame. He weighed parchment stamped direwolf white. His jaw tightened. "Ned Stark alive. Aye, the realm shudders." Melisandre's lips curled. "The Lord of Light shapes mortal fates to his fire. Wolves, lions, stags, they all burn. Only Azor Ahai endures." Stannis' knuckles whitened on his sword's pommel. Whether he saw in the news threat or ally, none could tell. But Dragonstow's ravens took wing before dawn. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei crushed a goblet when the first whisper of Ned Stark's escape reached her. Wine speckled her gown like spilled rubies. Grand Maester Pycelle trembled as he relayed butchered rumors. Small folk chanting of a wolf reborn. Brothels wagering silver stags on whether Stark banners would breach the city walls by year's end. Cersei dismissed him with a flick, summoned Sir Meryn, and ordered gold cloaks doubled round Sansa's chambers. She paced the Tower of the Hand, where her son sat on the black iron throne swinging legs petulantly. Joffrey laughed at her fury, only for a heartbeat, until her slap cracked across his cheek. Silence fell thicker than summer heat. Cersei bent, kissed his reddening skin, whispered honeyed threats about northern savages flaying pretty princes. Joffrey's eyes narrowed, mouth twisting. Somewhere in that glittering malice, a seed of lethal resolve sprouted. Littlefinger watched all with cool amusement, plotting new ladders to climb. Varys glided through corridors, whispers coiling like incense behind him. The eunuch spiders snared tidings from docks, cloaked men smuggling northern grain in secret into the city's starving potters' district. When Cersei demanded names, Varys shrugged. Even spiders lose webs when wind rises. Yet privately he fed those smugglers coin and silence. For Varys wagered on realms, not kings. Across the narrow sea, a different flame brewed. In the red wastes beyond Qarth, Daenerys Targaryen watched her dragons caper across scorched stones, wings strengthening with each sunrise. Messengers from Illyrio blew dust from cracked lips as they knelt, offering scrolls heavy with news of Westeros in turmoil. Wolves at war, lions riven, a throne contested. Dany's violet gaze smoldered. Tell ships to water and provision. My children grow hungry, the world shall feed them. The dragons shrieked, echoing across ruin. Somewhere within that cry the old world of Westeros shuddered, though few yet heard. Winter deepened. At Castle Black, Jon Snow tightened the last saddle strap as pale dawn bled across the wall. Qhorin Halfhand raised a gloved fist, signaling silence. 40 rangers filed through the gate, their breath drifting ghosts into pre-dawn gloom. Ghost padded ahead, ears pricked. The single horn call sounded behind them. Farewell, not alarm. Jon looked back once at the colossal wall of ice towering impossibly high, glowing faint blue, then turned southeast beyond the march of civilization. Paths wound among frost-bitten pines, silence broken only by crunch of hooves and distant wolf howl. By dusk, they reached Long Barrow, and Qhorin signaled camp. Fires were forbidden. They ate salted beef jagged as rock, drank meltwater chill as the others' legend. The night forest felt alive with unseen watchers. Once Jon glimpsed movement, pale shapes sliding between trees, yet when he blinked only branches swayed. On the third night, they found the first corpses. A Mormont scout dangled from a pine, face frozen in a rictus, blue eyes glassy. Qhorin uttered no prayer, only hacked the corpse down to rest upon pyre of greenwood. They burned it, the flame sputtering foul blue. No one spoke. The smell of charred flesh clung long after. Later Jon dreamed. Winterfell's courtyard buried under snow, the heart tree bleeding black sap, his siblings' voices echoing through empty halls. He woke with Ghost, snarling softly. Beyond camp, a faint glow pulsed like foxfire. Snowfall muffled every crackle of twig as Jon padded closer. In a small clearing crouched a weirwood sapling half the height of a man, its leaves crimson against white bark. Beneath it, a figure cloaked in midnight stared into its face. Benjen Stark. Jon's breath hitched. "Uncle?" The figure turned. Moonlight limned a visage pale as frost, eyes luminous blue. Not Benjen. Something wearing his shadow. It raised a hand. Frost blossomed across bark. Ghost lunged, fangs flashing. But the creature vanished, mist unraveling where it stood. The sapling's leaves shriveled into black ice that cracked and drifted apart like ash upon the breeze. Jon stumbled back to camp, heart drumming, and told Qhorin what he'd seen. The half-hand listened, expression etched of stone. "We press east at first light. Whatever darkness stalks this wood must reach no farther." They never reached the frost fangs. On the sixth dawn, horns sounded from ridge ahead. 2 blasts. Wildlings. Co. In arrow formation they swarmed uphill to find not a raiding party but a war host. Hundreds of free folk arrayed among boulders, mammoths stamping steam, giants looming like walking towers. At their center, cloaked in swirling eagle feathers, stood a tall, flame-haired man bearing a weirwood staff. Tormund Giantsbane, and beside him, a shadowy figure wearing a helm, wrought from ancient black iron. When the figure raised its arm, silence fell across the host. "Brothers of the Black," he called, voice echoing unnatural calm. "Parley under truce of old gods." Jon exchanged looks with Qhorin. The half-hand nodded once. The two parties met midway beneath a cracked granite monolith. Jon's breath steamed as he studied the helm, a faceplate shaped like a milk-white skull. Behind its hollow eye sockets glimmered strange light, green not blue. "I am Mance Rayder no longer," the masked one intoned. "The king beyond the wall died when crows left my flesh to freeze. Call me Horn Interpreter, for I speak for a song older than men." Qhorin's stance tightened. "We carry no love for riddles. Speak plain." "Plain?" The helm tilted. "Plain is this. The white wrath rises. Your wall shall not hold. Ours is to flee south or die where we stand. You will open gates, let free folk pass, or your order will be the first corpses in their ranks." "Nander." Jon felt ice shiver along spine. "Open the wall to thousands sworn only to themselves. We doom the kingdoms. The kingdoms are doomed regardless." Horn Interpreter lifted his staff. The weirwood cracked, releasing faint weeping note like a child crying far away. But choose. Corin's voice fell low. We will carry your words to Lord Commander. Until then, we are enemies still. Torment's laughter boomed. Enemies, friends, when the dead walk, all knives cut same flesh. He spat in the snow. But know this, Crow Pups. There's power stirring in ice can melt iron and freeze blood in the same heartbeat. We've seen villages of whites marching single file like ants. We follow Horn Interpreter because he follows hope. Parley ended. Both hosts withdrew. That night Halfhand gathered rangers. We ride double speed to the wall. John, take second horn, blow if shadow rises. No fire, no noise save what gods demand. Snow thickened. Wind howled. Rangers rode bent to necks of horses. Every mile felt watched. Behind them, unseen, blue lights flickered in the forest. South of the neck, the Lannister host licked wounds. Tywin stood in a field tent amid maps rising like dunes, his gauntleted finger tracing the boglands where half his van drowned. Kevin eyed his brother uneasily. Withdraw to Harrenhal, gather strength. Withdraw. Tywin's voice was deathly calm. The Starks bleed, too. We seize the twins, cut the north from the south. Walder Frey's loyalty is stone cheap, pay it. Once the bridge is ours we march. Moat Cailin will collapse without supply. The boy Robb boasts victory. Let him starve on his own mire. Gold armor rang as he turned. And double the bounty on Arya Stark. A second wolf in the capital breaks staggers not only Stark morale, but Baratheon remnants. Greyjoy fools, every rat sniffing crown dust. I want the girl. Raven ink dried, coins changed hands. Cutthroats thronged crossroads, each imagining royal reward. Arya's image. Sharp gray eyes in freckled face, pasted on tavern doors as though winter ghosts needed parchment to find prey. On the Iron Islands, Balon Greyjoy devoured these whispers. His laughter rolled like surf smashing cliffs. North Wolf gnaws South Lion. We strike the ribs. He summoned captains, unfurled sails, and dark longships crept east under moonlight, plotting to seize the lightly defended north while Stark armies marched south. Theon stood at Balon's side, inner war twisting gut. Betray Robb's trust or wither in father's scorn. Salt spray tasted bitter. Back at White Harbor, Lady Manderly welcomed flow of refugees. Tall Karstark's bandy of Lim, sallow crofters from Amber Hills, tattered Bolton men claiming flight from Ramsay's Lash. Some whispered that Wyman Manderly financed secret ships along the Bight to ferry Stark sympathizers south toward Stormlands, forging silent pacts with Stannis Master of Ships. These whispers reached Varys, reached Littlefinger, reached even the free cities, dancing across wine-stained tables like lively crabs. Amid storm and plot, Ned Stark advanced. From Barrowton he rode to Winterfell ahead of the main host, 10 northern lancers his guard, craving the sight of grey walls and the splendor of Godswood canopy in frost. When the castle rose on the horizon, tears blurred his vision. Smoke curled from chimneys. Ravens cawed from rookery towers. At the gate, Hodor lifted portcullis chain with gentle grunt, while old Nan hobbled forth, clutching a shawl. "My boy," she croaked, patting his gauntlet as though he were still small. Ned dismounted stiffly, knelt, pressed lips to the earth of his home. He entered the crypts first, torch casting long shadows among cairns of kings of winter. He knelt before Lyanna's statue, stone roses fallen from frozen fingers, then before Brandon, before his father Rickard. "Protect them," he whispered. "Guide them." In that hushed gloom he felt ghosts lean close, not accusing but watching, waiting to see if their blood would stand true. Above ground he found Maester Luwin's solar where Bran once pored over ledgers. Now casks of dried apples lined walls. Weaponsmith drawings cluttered the table. Ned traced Bran's spidery scrawl describing pulley systems had planned for parapets, and grief pierced anew. Bran somewhere far south, crippled beneath Lannister cruelty. The memory turned to iron in his spine. He vowed again to free Sansa, to find Bran and Rickon, to shelter Arya under Winterfell's still strong walls. At dusk, a horn announced riders approaching from east. Asha Greyjoy's scouts. The Kraken banner spotted. Ned climbed the tallest tower. Through a dusk haze he saw longship's masts punching sky along Storald's Point. He issued orders. Recall every detachment still north. Ready garrison crossbows, light watchtowers along the coast. Winterfell would not be flayed while wolves fought south. Ravens soared. One wing to Robb as he prepared next guerrilla strike. Ironborn raiding White Harbor coastline. Robb cursed salt warriors, dispatching Deepwood Reaver detachments west. War stretched them thin as a drawn bowstring, yet no thread snapped. Not yet. Far inside the neck, Arya's band stumbled upon massacre. Crannog huts smoldering, bodies frozen in grotesque final poses. No lion banners here. The corpse's eyes shone pale sapphire. Nymeria waters knelt, fingers brushing frost on a young girl's cheek. "It begins," she murmured. Arya felt the air sharpen. Somewhere distant, a three-blast horn might even now be sounding. She tightened her gloves, whispered her list, added a name she'd never spoken. The Night King. She had never seen him, never believed, but the dead girl's eyes eradicated doubt. The gutter-bound followed reed trails toward Greywater. Arya prayed the fortress of Crannog moving islands existed, that Jojen's magic still shielded its heart. Rain slashed, wind howled, and in each gust she heard ghostly rattles. Days bled into weeks. Fronts shifted. At won battles, songs sprouted. At lost, curses bloomed. Ned's main host finally linked with Robb on the causeway's last solid ridge. Wolf banners converging beneath swirling snow. Father and son embraced in a sea of clanging spears and roaring men. Catelyn arrived a week later with Riverland levies half-starved but unbowed. The reunion sobbed into wind and steadied into war council beneath wax-spattered tents. There, maps converged. Ironborn arrows upon North's flank, Tywin regrouping, Cersei tightening circle round Sansa tight. And west of everything, a new sigil appeared on rumor's winds. A gaunt corpse hand clutching a spear of ice. Scouts returned babbling of villages hushed by whites, of moose frozen mid-stride, eyes crystal blue. Ned heard each tale stone-faced, then laid palm atop Jon's latest letter describing Horn Interpreter's ultimatum. "We must break south soon," Robb argued, finger stabbing toward River Run. "Lift siege, free Uncle Edmure." "We must secure the coast," Catelyn countered. Greyjoy raiders already sack fishing hamlets. Ned listened, then said softly, "We must ride north." Silence crashed. Lords glanced, murmured. The idea seemed madness, abandoning war against Lannisters to fight phantoms. Ned raised a hand. "Hear me. Our blades win battles. But if the dead rise unchecked, all battles lose meaning. We ride to support the wall." Greatjon slammed a fist. "South still needs smashing. The living need saving more," Ned said. "Winters past we lost thousands to mere cold. Imagine cold walking, armed." He swept gaze across faces. "And understand this. Lannisters rely on South arrogance, conviction that North will always answer insults. If we deny battle, let bog and frost sap them, they'll fracture themselves while we march for the true enemy." Arguments raged deep into night. At last they agreed a split. Robb, Greatjon, and Reed guides would harry Tywin's march, tying lions in endless bog. Ned, Lady Mormont, Karstark vanguard, Meg's daughter Alysanne commanding archers, would push north with a quarter host to aid the watch. Catelyn would ride to White Harbor to rally coast, meet Manderley fleets, protect Winterfell. Plans inked. Ned sought sleep but found none. Outside, snow drifted. Silent. He stared at the stars, recalled old Nan's tales. The last hero walking with giants, children of forest, a sword of dragonsteel. He lacked dragonsteel, lacked giants, though rumors spoke of giant allies among wildlings. He had only men, women, boys shaking beneath wolf banners, and a faith that ice could be answered by fire of human spirit. Dawn pinked thin clouds. Ravens croaked. Ned knelt in frost, pressed fingers to soil, and swore by old gods and knew that every breath left in him would stand between death and his children. Then he rose, issued marching drums, and the northern host churned toward Winter's Maw. On the wall that same dawn, Jon Snow limped through gate, flanked by a dozen rangers half their original number. Frostbite blackened fingers, ghost scratches laced his arms, but he clutched the horn. Not the single one he'd carried. Another, ancient, taller than a man's forearm, carved of glossy black wood veined pale gold. Corin Halfhand had fallen buying their escape, breathing last words. "Burn me. Get it to the wall. Sound it only when ice walks upon you." Jon collapsed before Lord Commander Todder. Words poured rattling. "Free folk host, Horn of Winter maybe, blue-eyed shadows." Mormont's weathered face paled. He struck the table. "Send ravens to every kingdom. Tell them the great war has begun." Ravens flew. One reached Ned Stark 2 nights later, as he crossed the last river ford. He read by torch, face hardening. He mounted, voice booming. "Make ready. The dawn we feared is upon us." Snow fell heavier, as though the sky itself tried to bury the living before the dead arrived. And in crypt chilled streets of King's Landing, a beggar child shoved through crowds clutching yet another raven's cylinder. Ignored by gold cloaks, ignored by lords, until he reached the Red Keep's postern. Their Varys received him, broke the seal. Radiance of shock flickering across placid mask. He whispered, "So soon," flicking the parchment into brazier. He turned toward the scream of palace bells ringing warning of riot at the fish market. His secrets weighed heavier now. The Dance of Thrones might become a funeral dirge if no one listened to distant horns. Far across the sea, Daenerys' fleet raised sails of black and red, dragons wheeling overhead. Her eyes shone with the stormlight of prophecy. She stepped onto flagship prow, wind whipping silver-gold hair. "Westeros bleeds." She called to captains. "We sail to forge anew." The dragons answered in wildfire shrieks. The pieces of the great game scattered, reformed, scattered again. Wolves, lions, krakens, dragons, and pale riders of death. Amid them stalked Arya with needle, Jon with ancient horn, Ned with ice, each converging upon a horizon streaked with blood and starlight. Winter crept, unseen but all-devouring, and the song of ice and fire found fuller voice than any bard could ever hope to tame. Yet even winter's depth might bend to stubborn hope. In a lonely gorge near the Shivering Sea, Sandor Clegane shared camp with a dozen wayward septons, and one ragged knight wearing twin towers on torn surcoat, Sir Bryndon's nephew, hiding from lions. Clegane gnawed charred rabbit, eyes reflecting orange flame. "Stark lives," he muttered. "Hell need killers. I kill lions well." The septon crossed himself. The burned man laughed mirthless. Somewhere far, Arya Stark felt that laugh echo across fate's web. At first snows of true winter, Ned Stark's columns sighted the walls looming alabaster cliffs. Fires dotted the castles. Horns blasted 2 short notes of welcome. Ned dismounted, gazed up awestruck despite his burdens. The wall dwarfed every memory of childhood stories. A frozen titan shouldering sky. He thought of Benjen lost beyond, of Jon somewhere atop the rampart awaiting him. Wind knifed his face, tears froze unshed. The gate yawned open. Through it strode Jon Snow, gaunt yet unbroken, ghost at heel. Father and son clasped forearms. No words could bridge their shared histories. Their eyes sufficed. Behind them horns sounded thrice across the wilderness, 3 blasts. The wall shook with the note. Others. Chaos erupted. Rangers raced to battlements. Ned drew ice. Its Valyrian edge sang in frosty air. Jon lifted the black horn banded gold, met his father's gaze. "Now," Ned said. Jon raised the horn high, lungs filling with air icy as death, and blew. The sound rolled like mountains falling, like glaciers splitting, reverberating across endless night. From beyond the trees, pale lights blossomed. The Great War began in earnest. And above the tumult, a spray of snowflakes drifted between father and son, each crystal catching torchlight, scattering it into tiny rainbows. Fleeting, fragile, beautiful signs that even in deepest dark, light might endure if the living stood together. PGSQL. The horn blast's echo had scarcely died among the frozen crags when the forest itself seemed to exhale. A low white vapor pressed from between the pines, crawling across the snow in coiling fingers that matted the undergrowth with hoarfrost. Every pine needle cracked as if struck by sudden glassy cold. Ned felt the air thicken, tasted metal on his tongue, and for one stretched heartbeat, believed he was a boy again, standing beside Benjen, on a midnight watch, as the aurora writhed over the shivering sea. Only this was no shimmering ghost light, but the herald of something vaster, hungrier, older than the long memory of the North. Jon thrust the ancient horn into a ranger's hands and ran for the inner yard. "Dragonglass!" he shouted over the rising clamor. Every man to the armory, spears and arrowheads now. Ghost bolted ahead, his white fur already rimed blue in the unnatural chill. Ned strode after him, boot heel ringing on hoar-slick stone, cloak snapping like a sail in storm winds. Ramps groaned beneath rushing men, torches failed one by one, flames guttering to cold cerulean nubs before snuffing altogether. In their wake darkness spread, pricked only by the uncanny glow rising from the trees beyond the cleared killing field. Nothing moved there, and yet every instinct Ned possessed screamed of an advance, the silent glide of an army that needed no drums, no shouts, no banners. Rangers scrambled along the crenels, fumbling with crossbows tipped in dragonglass. Maester Luwin's thin hair crackled where frost kissed it. He stumbled, nearly dropping a crate of obsidian arrowheads. Ned steadied him. "Easy, Maester. The wall has stood through worse nights than this." Luwin's eyes were too large. "If the tales are true, my lord, no night has ever been worse than this." Beneath them, the main gate creaked on tortured hinges as the castle's outer portcullis slammed home. Iron port bars in the tunnels descended with metallic shrieks. Even so, Ned sensed how flimsy such defenses were against foes that could simply command the dead within the walls to rise and turn the locks from inside. He needed living courage and hot blades, not castle tricks. He drew ice. The moonlight, or what passed for moonlight in that witch-white haze, ran blue along the rippled steel. Jon emerged from the trapdoor with 3 bundles of dragonglass daggers. "I've posted Alysanne Mormont to the east parapet, Karstark spearmen at the west. The gate is last line. If it falls, we burn everything behind us." Ned clasped his son's shoulder. "If they come, stay at my side." Jon shook his head. "You'll need a runner, and I promised Corin I'd lead the ranging party that knows the ground beyond the palisade. We can bleed them in the trees, make them show themselves. You promised me you'd live." Ned's fingers bit into the mail at Jon's arm. "I'll keep both vows." Jon slipped free, eyes shining fire and snow. Then he was gone into the stairwell, cloak flashing behind him like a dark comet. Ned wanted to call him back, to lock every son and daughter in some hidden chamber of Winterfell where nothing with blue eyes could ever reach. But duty tugged him toward the northern battlement. Lady Mage Mormont already waited there. Great axe rested across the embrasure. Snow clotted her bear cloak. Her breath steamed like forge smoke. "Lord Stark," she said, voice roughened by long nights at sea. "See there?" She pointed beyond the cleared ground where lantern stakes had once marked a boundary between man's dominion and Winter's. The stakes were gone, or rather, buried. New snow, yet snow that glimmered faintly, as though each flake held a shard of captured starlight, rose in billows, sweeping up the slope toward the wall. Within that river of white, shapes passed. Antlered elk frozen mid-stride. A shaggy aurochs with rents where crows had picked. Children in tattered wildling furs. Brothers of the Watch still wearing the black. All moved with the same slow inevitability, as if drawn on invisible chains toward heat, toward life, toward the gate they would batter with flesh and bone until ice itself broke. "Sweet mother," whispered Sir Roderick, crossing himself. Ned lifted ice. The steel felt heavier than ever. "Signal the archers." Horns sounded, a single blast this time, the note for ready weapons. Flaming arrows whooshed into the dark. Halfway through flight each firehead went sullen, quenched by the cold so swiftly that only a brief orange afterimage remained upon the retinas of the watchers. The shafts thudded into bodies, but no shrieks followed. Only a muffled splintering as glass or frozen sinew cracked. Lady Mormont spat. "Obsidian only." So the second volley hissed forth, flight feathers black against pale horizon. Where obsidian shattered, bodies in the press collapsed, inert. Yet for every corpse that fell, 3 more stepped over. The tide thickened, clambering at last over the charred remains of the palisade, flowing unerringly toward the wall's foot as water seeks the low place. Somewhere to the west, a trumpet of giant horns rang, and the wall beneath Ned's boots trembled. Shapes bigger than houses lumbered from the tree line. Mammoths, their fur hoarfrost white, tusks rimed silver. Upon their backs rode figures in armor that drank the meager light. Tall, impossibly thin, faces hidden behind helms, sculpted from frozen crystal. They carried no banners, but a sigil burned upon each glaciate shield. Spiraling arms around a pupil of night. Fear coiled in Ned's gut. He had faced Robert's fury on the trident and Jaime's golden arrogance in the throne room. Yet nothing like this slow, inexorable majesty, this certainty of ancient triumph. The others did not charge. They simply came. Ghost bounded along the ramparts, red eyes glaring. Jon followed with the ranging party, all on foot for swiftness, pouring through the murder holes above the gate out into the wasted killing ground. Torches dipped in lamp oil blazed briefly in their hands. They stabbed them into pitch-soaked trenches prepared that afternoon. Firewalls roared alive, casting dancing orange bars across encroaching white. The dead pressed forward anyway, feet sizzling where blue ice met flame. "Burn them!" Jon shouted, hewing at a white that scrambled the trench. Dragon glass chipped in his blade's groove, but the thing fell headless. Another clambered over it at once. From above, Karstark archers loosed obsidian in a black rain. Bolts drove ghosts of steam from the undead, yet arrows dwindled fast. Ned saw piles of spent shafts already heaped against the merlons. Behind the first wave, one of the crystal-helmed riders raised a hand. A soundless vibration rippled outward. The flames in the pits faltered, guttered as if a great breath had blown across them, and dimmed to sullen coals. Jon staggered as darkness shoved at his back. Ned gripped the parapet so hard his gauntlets bit into stone. Catapults! Huge torsion engines posted atop the wall released, hurling earthen pots packed with wildfire. Emerald comets arced and burst among the mammoths, coating beasts and riders in green conflagration. Where wildfire clung, even the unnatural cold could not quench. 2 mammoths trumpeted, falling heavily. One crashed upon a knot of whites, crushing them to shattered limbs. Icemen slid nimbly aside, gliding like dancers on glass. An answering fury came. Shards of crystal hurled upward by unseen force. They struck the wall, piercing stone blocks as quarrels pierce pine. Where each shard landed, a web of crackling frost spread, undermining rock mortar with devastating speed. A watchtower 200 yards east shattered, avalanche roaring down the wall's face. Men screamed as they tumbled with blocks of ice half a league to the forest floor. Still, Ned refused to spare. He turned to Mage. "Have the Manderley engines ready." She grinned her bear snarl. "Already primed." She signaled, and lighter trebuchets skimmed casks overhead, each packed not with pitch, but with lime and salt sacks powdered fine by Lady Manderley's masons. When the casks burst on impact amidst the undead, white powder flurried, clinging to damp frozen flesh. Skin crumbled where salt bit, limbs sheared away under white's own weight. The untidy front ranks collapsed into heaps of dry sticking parts. Yet beyond them new ranks flowed in. weightless and unslowed. Jon's runners sprinted for the gate tunnels. Ned's breath caught. They meant to lure the horde after them through the killing holes beneath, where vats of boiling oil waited. But if the gate failed to shut again, "Trust your son," said Sir Roderick as though reading Ned's thoughts. He learned from the best. Ned almost laughed. Bitter pride, sharp as pine sap. "He learned from the wall," he said, and lifted ice high to signal readiness. Below, the main sally port yawned open. Jon and a dozen black brothers dashed through, ghosts in the smoke. The first whites pursued, then more, filling the passage in a funnel. When the last living man slipped out a side postern, a lantern dropped from the murder slit. Oil in the floor channels whooshed up in a curtain of yellow dotto. Flesh bubbled, bone cracked. For a moment Ned believed the tactic worked. The charging dead clogged and charred. Then, like beetles from a nest, icicles scuttled along the ceiling and speared downward through stone. The portcullis chain parted with a shrill metallic ping. The gate crashed into the burning heap as though flung by a giant. Through the breach surged more whites, untouched by fire still licking the stones. Cold quenched heat in seconds. Embers hissed out one after another. "They learn," Ned murmured. And quicker than men." Mage hefted her axe. Time to greet them in person. They thundered down staircases toward the yard, Ned's injured leg forgotten in the rush. Shouts echoed, steel crashed, horses squealed somewhere in their pens. The undead spilled through the courtyard like locusts. Karstark pikemen formed a bristling hedgehog, but deadweight pressed until shafts snapped. Whites wriggled beneath shields, clawing at living calves. Ice rose and fell in Ned's hands. Valyrian steel bit deeper than dragonglass, slicing clean through glacial armor and boiling the chill where blade met body. Every strike rang a note that cut through clamor. Deep, thrumming, pure. Behind him, Lady Mormont hacked like a woodsman felling a grove, curses punctuating each blow. Karstark's banner-bearer went down. Ned caught the standard before it struck ground and drove its point through a corpse eye. Eliza Mormont dragged wounded men behind a cart, applying fire-hardened tourniquets. Among the clash, Ned glimpsed Jon locked in duel with one of the Crystal Knights. Longclaw's bastard Valyrian edge rang against a sword so thin it seemed woven of moonlight. Each parry sent blue sparks spitting. Jon's breath plumed heavy. The others gave none. With every pass frost crawled up Longclaw's fuller. Jon pivoted, rolling beneath a slash. Buried dragonglass dagger in the foe's hip. The crystal armor fissured, but did not break. Pale fingers closed around Jon's throat. Ned shouldered through the melee, yelling. Before he could reach them, Ghost lunged, sinking fangs into the other's calf. A cracking shriek split the air, sound not of pain but of rending glass. The creature turned its helm face downward, surprised, and Jon, knees buckling, whipped Longclaw in a brutal upswing that sheared frozen jaw from skull. The figure disintegrated, helmet shattering into shards that winked out like dying stars. Jon collapsed. Ghost stood guard over him, snarling the constant thunder of a winter storm compressed into fur and fang. The disintegration rippled through the ranks. Whites nearest faltered, as though their puppeteers' strings went slack. In that heartbeat, defenders surged, pushing them back over heaps of ice dust where bodies had been. But victory shimmered and vanished. Other captains advanced. 7 in all, each astride a dead steeds plated in mirror ice. The central rider bore a spear tipped in a spearhead of swirling frostfire. He, or it, lifted the weapon. A ripple, like a cold sunrise, spread across the yard. The dead stiffened, then renewed the onslaught. Snow thickened to blizzard. Ned could see only a dozen paces. Somewhere the main keep bell tolled, though no hand pulled its rope. Wind alone tore at the clapper. Men fought shapes glimpsed only when lightning. Yes, lightning. Forked silently from cloudless sky, illuminating silhouettes locked in mortal congress. Sir Roderick's voice cut through the storm. Dragons, to the air, look. Ned followed the pointing sword. Above the wall's edge a trio of shapes swept from the west, wings vast as sailcloth. bellies red gold in the ghostlight. At their forefront rode a woman clothed in shards of black and scarlet scales. Silver gold hair streamed behind her like a comet's tail. Fire burst from the leader dragon's throat, a cone of orange-edged white hot. It scythed across the courtyard, incinerating whites in windrows. Flames met the unnatural chill, and prevailed. Ice boiled, bursting whites into hissing steam. The remaining others wheeled, spears raised. Frostbolts leapt skyward, projectiles of solid winter aimed for the dragons. Two missed. One struck the green dragon's left wing, lodging deep. The beast shrieked, but its rider barked in a language Ned did not know, and the dragon banked, wing half-functional, yet still aloft. Jon pulled himself upright as the dragon screamed overhead. Recognition flared in his eyes. Targaryen fire. Nissa Nissa come again. He looked to Ned. If the fire can buy a lull, we must strike their captains together. Valyrian steel, nothing else holds. Ned nodded. They moved side by side toward the central other. Ice in Ned's grasp pulsed, almost humming. Longclaw shimmered with black ripples of rainbow. Snow parted like a curtain as the crystal rider dismounted. It stood half again a man's height, all edges and prisms. In its left hand, a longsword. In its right, the frostfire spear. It gestured, and the yard fell silent, but for the crackle of small fires. Jon circled right. Ned left. The other shifted weight so smoothly, it was as if the ground moved around it. Spear flicked at Jon in a feint, then reversed toward Ned. He parried. Spear slid along ice. Sending a vibration clear to Ned's shoulder. Cold stabbed the marrow of his bones. Jon lunged, nicking the foe's thigh. Frost bloomed, sealing the wound instantly. They fought in a slow, deadly waltz. Each heartbeat, a lifetime. Ned's breath rasped, turning to frost upon his beard. Jon sweated beneath sable mail. Sweat freezing the instant it surfaced. Above, the dragons made another pass. Flames bathed the wall top. Stone steamed and ran like wax. Shadows cavorted within the firewash. Undead screaming, living cheering. The other pivoted impossibly fast. Spear butt, striking Jon's ribs, hurling him aside. Jon hit hard, air blasting from lungs. The spearhead swept toward his throat. Ghost leapt again, too late. Ned intercepted, locking ice against the spear's haft. Cold and heat mated in shrieking protest. Both weapons stuck, frozen together. The other cocked its sword to cleave Ned's head from shoulders. From the sky dropped a second spear, metal, ordinary, yet hurled with ferocious strength. Its steel point punched into the crystal helm, cracking it. Arya Stark landed a moment later, rolling to absorb impact, needle in hand. She had leapt from the walkway high above. Ned's heart lurched. When had she arrived? No time. He roared, wrenching ice free. Jon scrambled upright, dragon glass dagger still clutched. Arya darted under the other's sluggish backswing, sliced the back of its knee with needle. The wound did not bleed, but the leg buckled. Jon drove the obsidian dagger into the opening under its arm, pushing until pommel kissed icy mail. Ned swung ice in a two-handed arc. Blade met neck. Crystalline torso parted like brittle clay. Light burst outward, blue so bright that for an instant Ned saw nothing but color. Then the other shattered to diamond dust, drifting on the wind. Across the courtyard the remaining crystal knights halted. Some raised arms as though confused, others simply crumbled where they stood. The undead masses jerked, limbs spasming, then sagged like marionettes with strings slashed. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of torches reigniting under natural flame. The blizzard ceased abruptly. Snowflakes hung suspended before falling straight down like normal weather once more. Jon bent, hands on knees, gasping. Ghost licked his face, whining. Arya straightened, scanning for threats, gray eyes feral bright. Her grin held more of the wolf than the child Ned once knew. Ned looked at his children, at Mage leaning on her axe, at surviving brothers of the Night's Watch hobbling among heaps of frost-dusted corpses. Men cheered raggedly. Overhead, dragons circled, triumphant cries rolling like thunder. He turned as the Dragon Queen descended, snow swirling about her booted feet. Close now, Ned saw purple in her eyes and sorrow older than the wall in the lines beside her mouth. She inclined her head. "Lord Stark, I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen. I see we fight the same enemy." "Now." Ned bowed, iron in his knees beginning to shake as the night's toll reasserted itself. "Then let us pledge ourselves allies, your grace. The long night has promised us no less." Daenerys glanced to Jon, whose gaze met hers with something between awe and recognition. A hush breathed through the gathered, as if an unseen page turned in a book of fate. Dawn kindled behind the wall then. First blush of pale rose stealing across sky. Light filtered through drifting crystal moats of slain others, scattering rainbows over the ruined courtyard. Ned watched colors dance upon armored shoulders, upon the Dragon Queen's hair, upon Jon's black cloak, upon Arya's sullied leathers, and he knew this was no simple sunrise. It was the first heartbeat of a new age, hammered on anvils of ice and fire alike. Yet dawn revealed also their costs. Half the Karstark guard dead, a score of black brothers frozen where they stood, crumbled battlements, a gate hung askew. And beyond the wall still lay uncounted legions of the dead, marshaled perhaps by captains, even mightier than the one they had felled. Ned sheathed ice. "This was only a forerunner," he said quietly to those nearest. "The Night King himself has yet to show his face." "Then we go to him," Daenerys answered. "Dragonfire will blaze a road. Valyrian steel will close it behind us. We strike before he gathers strength anew." Jon nodded. "And free folk, giants, children of the forest, any who still breathe beyond will rally if they see hope walking north." Arya spun needle, wiping frost from its slender length. "Hope has quick feet. Let's test their pace." "And now Wanda." Ned felt weary enough to sleep a fortnight, yet the embers of resolve in his chest burned hotter than pain. "We march at sundown," he said to Mage. "Rouse maesters to tend the wounded. Every man who can stand will carry dragon glass. And send riders south. Tell Robb, tell Catelyn, tell every lord with courage. The wall holds for now, but the war marches beyond it. If we fail in the lands of always winter, no Southron army will matter." Mage saluted, voice rough with emotion. "The bears will roar behind you, Ned Stark. And the wolves will answer," he replied. The courtyard bustled, men piling white corpses for burning, blacksmiths reheating frozen hinges, ravens flapping skyward. High above, in the vault of newborn blue, the dragons executed slow spirals, plumes of steam trailing from their nostrils, as though even they exhaled relief. Ned took one more glance at the clean horizon where sunrise pushed darkness westward. Then he turned to his children, drawing them close beneath his cloak. For a single breath, they were no longer soldier, ranger, assassin, but simply family. He kissed Arya's brow, clasped Jon by the neck, whispered the words he had carried unspoken since the Black Cell. "I am proud of you both." They parted too soon. Duty beckoned them each to different preparations. Jon to confer with Tormund Giantsbane, Arya to scout supply routes through the Milkwater Gorge, Ned to plan with Daenerys beneath the ruined watchtower where her dragons now roosted like living siege engines. Yet, a thread of quiet certainty joined them. Whatever winter yet remained, they would not face it alone. By mid-morning the first columns formed outside the gate, banners whipping in the freshening wind. The direwolf of House Stark, the crowned three-headed dragon of Targaryen restored, the roaring bear of Mormont, the sunspear of Martell brought north by a handful of hot-blooded volunteers who'd refused to let their realm sleep while others froze. Even the black crow of the Night's Watch flew anew, ink on snow, ragged but unbowed. Ned mounted his horse. Greywind's brother Pup grown to muscled charger, and surveyed the gathered. To call them an army was generous. Half-armored, half-trained, many hollow-eyed, from sleepless weeks. But the same was true for men who had once followed him to war against Rhaegar, and they had toppled a dynasty. Now they would topple winter itself. Trumpets sounded low. The wall's gates opened wide. Dragons lurched into motion, wings stirring powder snow into blizzards of pearl. And forward went the living. Over churned ice, through hushed forests, into the heart of a night older than names. Ned rode at their head, ice across his knees, breath billowing like the smoke of a forge. Somewhere beyond those silent woods, a king of death awaited with armies unnumbered and patience that outlasted empires. But winter, Ned Stark thought, belongs to the north, and the north remembers. So he led them, and the sound of living voices lifted skyward, raw and unafraid, chasing away the last fragile echoes of the horn blast that had begun the longest night. The march continued. Il-Ka. PGSQL. The column advanced at dusk, torches hooded to dull orange glimmers, swallowed quickly by the vastness of pines. Dragons glided overhead, two now, for Rhaegal nursed his wing in sullen circles, while Drogon and Viserion swept the dark in widening orbits. Beneath that living canopy, Jon led the van with Tormund Giantsbane, direwolf and giants padding at his heels, free folk scouts ghosting from shadow to shadow. Ned rode a dozen yards back, astride the rangy gray he had named Hearthfire, Daenerys beside him garbed in scaled leather, the color of garnet. Their breaths mingled in crystalline fog, and in every exhale Ned sensed the long years separating Stark and Targaryen collapsing into shared purpose, older than both houses. Wind keened through ironwood crowns, carrying scents of pine tar pitch and the faint rot of long-dead things recently disturbed. Jon raised a clenched fist. The host halted. Ahead, the milkwater carved a black gash through snowfields, ice floes grinding like broken millstones. Lantern light flickered on stakes embedded along the far bank, free folk markers from Mance Raiders' vanished war camp. No sentries now, only the hush of a continent holding breath. "We cross in silence," Jon ordered. "Dragons circle wide once we're over. If they torch the river, we lose our bridge." The bridge proved a chain of frozen boulders, slick with hoarfrost. Giants waded first, hauling rope to lash between trees for balance, then unsullied, shields strapped on backs, spears uplifted like a thicket of iced reeds. Karstark bowmen followed, then the Bear Island foot, then Maester's wagons creaking under casks of dragonglass and tar. Ned watched each banner vanish into gloom, felt the weight of every beating heart depending upon decisions he had made in council by firelight. He spurred Hearthfire onto the boulders last. Hooves slipping, Arya steadying the flank with a gloved palm before darting ahead once more, wild as a snowlark. On the far bank, the land rose into low hills of broken granite. Jon signaled halt among tumble-down rings of standing stones, the Fist of the First Men, Joramun's haunt in older songs. Campfires were forbidden. Instead, shallow pits were dug, lined with coals banked in ash to shed small red eyes of warmth. Dany's Dothraki crouched near their horses, murmuring prayers to sky gods unfamiliar with snow. Somewhere a child of the forest appeared, leaf-brown skin mottled with green lichen, golden eyes aglow, offering silent handfuls of obsidian arrowheads before gliding off again like wind through grass. Ned met Bran there. A raven had circled thrice, landed upon a stone carved with runes worn smooth, and grown still until its feathers melted, to reveal Bran's thin form cloaked in weirwood bark. He stood on withered legs, somehow upright, sapling staff clenched in white fingers. Jon reached him first, tearing off goat fur gloves to clasp his brother, tears frosting on lashes. Ned approached slower, awe and tenderness wrestling inside him. "Father," Bran whispered, voice a rustle of distant leaves. "Your roots go deep." He touched Ned's breastplate. "The Night King guards an ice heart beneath the Shivering Spire, 3 days beyond the Valley of Silent Lakes. Strike it and the song of death unravels." Daenerys stepped forward. "Dragon fire?" Bran shook his head. "Fire alone can wound, not end." Valyrian steel tempered in the living flame of a dragon, wielded at the moment the dragon's breath sears the heart. Two fires joined. His gaze drifted to Jon. The blade must be thrust by the blood that bridges ice and fire. Silence spread, each listener understanding the name unsaid. Jon opened his mouth, closed it, looked to Ned. In that moment, father and son exchanged a lifetime. Ned's secret, Jon's birth, whispers that had weighted Ned's every prayer. Jon dipped his head. "Then that is what we do," Ned said. Bran sagged. Arya caught him. The raven retook shape, cawed, and vanished in a flurry of black into the night. Morning arrived colorless, sky a blank slate smudged by gray banners of storm. They marched again, trackless drifts swallowing footprints as quickly as they formed. By noon they reached the silent lakes. 7 ovals of ice rimmed by hoar silver bulrushes, surfaces so smooth they reflected clouds like mirror steel. At Jon's signal, the army skirted eastward, but unsullied rearguard reported motion. Whites beneath the ice, faces pressing up against crystalline skin, eyes blue beneath 3 inches of glass. As soldiers stepped light, the faces followed, sliding along in perfect mimic. Giants hammered poles into lake beds, cracking rings that spread spiderweb fractures outward before closing as fast as they formed. No matter, the drowned dead remained trapped beneath their spell. Near dusk, the vanguard crested a ridge and saw the Shivering Spire for the first time. A column of ice 2,000 feet tall, twisted like a unicorn horn, jutting from a valley floor swept bare by shrieking winds. Around its base sprawled a city of frozen spires, lesser towers broken, walls lying in plate-shard heaps, like the molted shell of some vast insect. Lights pulsed in windows, sometimes blue, sometimes a sickly violet. In the sky above, pale aurora flicked like serpent tongues. They bivouacked in a canyon cut from bedrock, natural walls shielding wind, though not coldspite. Maesters circulated hot broth in blackened kettles. Dragonfire had boiled the water in secret ravines to keep coals hidden. Ned convened final council inside a half-collapsed cave. Jon leads an infiltration column through the western breach. Ned began, tracing lines in packed snow. Arya, the Hound? Yes. Sandor Clegane had arrived with a band of broken men 2 days earlier, surprising no one more than himself. Torment 4 unsullied sappers with dragonglass charges. Your task: clear path to chamber Bran named the Heart Hall. Identify the heart. Plant charges if strike fails. When Drogon unleashes fire, Jon ends it with Longclaw. Nandero. Daenerys frowned. Rhaegal is grounded. Viserion and Drogon may not suffice to hold Sky if the Night King commands a dragon of his own. The Ice Worm, Arya muttered. She had seen it in Bran's green sight. A serpentine beast wrought of permafrost, wings like razors, veins coursing frozen wildfire. I'll handle the Wyrm, Sandor rasped, rubbing scorched cheek. Every eye swung to him. He bared teeth. I hate fire, not dragons. A wyvern's skull splits like any dog's under a good axe if someone drives it into reach. Giants'll hurl me high enough. Benandawa. Jon almost smiled. You'd leap at it swinging. Better sky than 7 hells. Plans set. The council dispersed. Ned lingered, staring at the crude map until lines blurred. He felt Kat's absence keenly. Her steadying warnings, her fierce insistence that no victory mattered if children were lost along the way. He thought of Rickon, hidden at Last Hearth, of Sansa in sea-bound safehold under Manderly care, of Robb bleeding lions in the south. If Ned fell tonight, would message reach them of why? He breathed deep, let the weight settle as part of him. Outside, flakes drifted like ashes. Arya waited near a snowbent fir. If I fall, she said, promise you'll tell Nymeria I'm sorry for leaving. Ned touched her cheek. You will tell her yourself. She leaned into his palm a heartbeat, then slipped off into gloom. Hours later, under a sliver-thin moon, the assault began. Unsullied in leather wraps crept into the broken city, blaze blackened. Behind, wildlings dragged sledges of pitchpots. Giants stalked alleyways, outline huge and pale, each carrying boulders riven from mountainside. Above, dragons banked in silence, wings beating slow so air only whispered. Ned commanded reserve near the south breach, Karstark spears. Mormont archers, Dothraki outriders, who had no horses now but fought on foot with arcs at the ready. From this vantage he watched the infiltration vanish beyond walls shimmering faint. A pang twisted as Jon's dark cloak disappeared down an archway. Inside the spire's precincts, the ground proved polished ice. Steps left no tracks. Jon advanced with Arya on his right, and Grey Wind's big brother Diraban, Robb's gift, padding behind. They found no guards, only statues carved of rime. Children curled as if sleeping, mothers kneeling in prayer, warriors gazing skyward. Each face bore the same look, tranquil surrender. Past them, corridors spiraled deeper, lined with crystalline sconces glowing inner blue. They reached a door of crooked ribs, frost fused. One unsullied placed charge of dragon glass shards bound in pitch. Arya lit fuse. They retreated round a bend. The blast flashed green, muffled, ice dust settling like powder. Through the gap, they entered a vault so wide their torches could not find walls. Only black distances, echoing footsteps days later. In its center rose a column of ice, 12 yards thick. Within it pulsed a light, ocean-deep blue shot with white ripples, beating slow as slumbering Leviathan's heart. The heart, Jon breathed. At its base a dais formed of petrified roots ringed the column, and on it sat the Night King in a throne grown from the same frozen roots. Crowned spires curled from brow, armor cast of night frost. He did not rise yet. He watched them, ancient amusement in eyes older than mountains. A soundless word rolled through chamber, more idea than voice. Come. Jon stepped forward despite himself. Longclaw shook. Tormund grabbed his arm, muttered curses. Broke the spell. Jon blinked. The Night King's eyes narrowed. From shadow behind throne slid wights newly forged, warriors in bronze that predates Valyria, grips on obsidian tridents, flayed sealskins for cloaks, more spilled from alcoves. Silent tide. Arya vanished. One heartbeat she stood beside Jon, next she melted into gloom. Sappers fanned, hurling knives, dragonglass exploding whites to powder. Tormund roared and charged, great axe biting. Diraban leapt, tearing at throats. Yet for each white felled, two more wordlessly replaced. Outside Ned heard first horn of emergency. Sky lit, violet, Viserion breathing azure flame onto iceworm arcs Donegal. Wyrm shrieked, downward diving dotting. Drogon slammed midair. Shockwaves shook frost from spire spines. High above, Sandor soared. Giants had hurled him from rampart. He clung to hammered iron hook, trailing chain that glittered like spiderweb. As Wyrm and Drogon locked claws, Sandor's arc intersected with undead dragon's neck. He released, axe raised two-handed, weight of fall driving edge through ice cervical plates. An explosion of shards birthed freezing hail. Sandor vanished in plume. Wyrm bucked, roar garbled. Drogon's fire gushed point blank, melting spine to slush. The ice dragon folded, crashing into distant plain. Silence, then cheer from ranks below as Clegane limped from crater. Armor rhymed, but living. Even he permitted a burnt grin. Ned signaled full assault. Karstarks pushed north gate, Mormont arrows blackening sky. Daenerys wheeled Drogon back toward spire apex. Fire raked parapets, searing line for unsullied ladder teams. Within Hart Hall, battle devolved to chaos. Tormund grappled a white berserker, both tumbling over edge into abyss encircling column where once water spiraled. He clung to ledge roaring curses until Jon hauled him up. Arya reappeared atop dais, springing from statue to statue like lynx. She darted behind the Night King, dagger shining. Yet when blade plunged, it struck air. The Night King blurred aside with preternatural speed, backhand sending Arya flying. She hit pillar, slid, breathless. Jon bellowed challenge, drove Longclaw in overhand stroke. The Night King raised bare palm. Steel met flesh and stopped dead, rhymed instantly. Frost coursed sword, spreading cracks along Valyrian pattern. Jon cried out, released hilt before cold reached bones. Tormund hurled axe, it shattered against unseen barrier. The Night King rose, extended hand again. Shards of ice ripped from floor. Swirling storm that slashed flesh. Unsullied shielded Jon with bodies, torn apart in heartbeat. Diraban leapt, only to be seized mid-air, frozen solid, dropped shattering. Jon's hope wavered. He sought Arya. She rose woozily. Sapper's last charge lay at her feet. She met Jon's gaze, nodded faint. He turned to heart, saw pulsing accelerate, the Night King's power drawn from it. If charge breached casing, heart might vent power long enough for strike. Outside, Daenerys' dove. Drogon's chest glowed cherry. She drew curved obsidian blade. Ned had reforged overnight with dragonflame. Bran's prophecy. Steel tempered in living fire. Drogon disgorged torrent of flame against column. Heat bloomed. Ice steamed. Jon zeiced moment. He sprinted, scooping fallen Longclaw. Blade crackling but intact. At Arya's whistle he dove forward. She lit fuse and hurled sash of pitchpots at base. Explosion blew him off feet. World became roar of shattering glaciers. Through steam, he saw heart exposed. Core no longer sapphire but molten blue. Swirling snow white, cracking veins. Night King staggered. First sign of weakness. Jon climbed rubble, raised Longclaw, wreathed in vapor. Flames from Drogon still poured. Sword tip glowed red. He thrust. Impact sent lance of agony up arm. Steel met heart, plunged half-blade. A scream erupted from ice itself, carried across miles like avalanche. Light burst outward, swept Jon away. Ned on lower stair saw Spire light up like dawn. White radiance through every crevice. Whites on walls stiffened, then crumbled. He shielded eyes as wave of warmth rushed. Snow evaporating in cloud. When he looked again, upper half of Spire sheared away, tumbling as glitter into valley. Silence. Then distant thunder. The heart collapsing within. Ned raced through ruined stairwells, lungs raw from steam. He found chamber half fallen, column gone. A bowl of fused glass at center, still pulsing faint. At rim lay Jon, motionless. Burnt hand fused to pommel. Arya knelt, pressing ear to his chest, tears streaking soot. Ned's knees buckled. He slid beside her, laid hand on Jon's heart. A flutter, then stronger. Jon gasped, eyes opening. Blue flickered within pupils, faded. He exhaled white plume, whispered, "Did it break?" "It broke," Arya said, voice shaking with relief. "And you're not allowed to." Jon smiled weakly. "Tell Ghost I'll walk him tomorrow." Tormund staggered over, beard singed. "Bloody Southron winters," he muttered, and laughed until tears froze. Outside, armies watched as aurora above Spire faded, replaced by wash of true stars unobscured. White heaps lay still. Far plains shimmered with remains of ice dragon melting into lake that hissed like kettle. Daenerys landed near Ned. "The heart is gone. The others have fallen." Bran's raven fluttered on parapet, voice human in everyone's mind. The song of death is ended, yet winter's memory lingers. Guard the realms of men, for cold returns always, though without conscience now. Tears streaked Daenerys' cheeks. She pressed hand over Jon's burnt fingers. He met her gaze, history unspoken but shared. Ned rose, looked across battlefield where dawn's first light painted untouched snow golden. In coming days they would count cost. Half of Unsullied dead, 3 giants fallen, Mormont arrows spent, Karstark heirs lost, Sandor missing, last seen limping into north wind muttering about chickens. They would ferry wounded south, bury fallen under cairns of ice and stone. They would fight again. Lions still roared, Krakens still plotted, but no shadow of undead would darken those wars. That night they lit victory pyres using wildfire carefully set in trenches. Flames danced blue-green, reflecting in tears, in goblets of thin ale, in Drogon's somber eyes. Ned sat beside Jon and Arya, wrapped in furs. He listened to quiet voices telling stories. Of the first time Jon rode a horse, of Robb's laughter breaking winter gloom, of Kat's counsel, of Lyanna's smile. The voices interwove until they were indistinguishable from wind sighing through fir needles. Hours before dawn, Ned slipped away to a ridge overlooking silent lakes now steaming under mild breeze. He stared at constellations. The North Star burned brightest, unmoved. Ned whispered to it. "We kept faith." Snowflakes drifted, ordinary once more, settling on his hair like blessings. Footsteps crunched behind. Daenerys. "He sleeps," she said. "Bran says, blue glimmer will fade from his hand, but leave a scar." Ned nodded. "Scars make maps of who we are." They stood together until sunrise bled pink across white plains. When first ray touched Spire's shattered stump, it refracted into rainbow shards. Color skated across Ned's boots, across Daenerys' palm, across the blade of ice leaning at his side. Light, he thought, had always been the enemy of winter's cruelty. Not because it burned, but because it revealed. Behind them camp stirred with fresh hope, with mundane complaints, chafed feet, empty bellies, love songs softly hummed. Life resumed, stubborn as spring seedlings shouldering through frost. Ned turned south at last. "We go home." And the company marched beneath banners, stained but unbowed, leaving behind only melted stone and drifting diamonds where a tyrant of ice had once sung death. Their path wound through forest where birds had begun to sing anew, across rivers thawed to rushing silver, past cairns marking friends fallen. Wolves followed at distance, unafraid. Overhead, dragons shadowed the land. Guardians now, of an age reclaimed. At Winterfell's gates weeks later, bells pealed. Catelyn rode out to greet them, red hair whipping. Robb at her side, gray wind howling. Sansa on rampart, skirts snapping. Rickon racing shaggy dog along parapet. Bran's raven perched upon weathervane. Home filled Ned's sight so fully he could barely breathe. He watched Jon dismount, Daenerys close behind. Watched Arya vault from saddle to run for Bran. Watched Robb fling arms around his siblings. Watched light spill from every arrow slit, every window, like the warmth of heart fires long banked but never quenched. Winter had not ended. Winter never truly ends in the north. But the great night had passed, and the dawn they had forged together would glow for generations. And so Ned Stark, once condemned traitor, now savior of realms, crossed his moat bridge, passed beneath gray stone arch, and felt the pack close around him at last. Whole again beneath walls that remembered, he whispered a vow to those who could no longer stand beside him. "Benjen Lyanna, old friends and new, we will guard this dawn well." Above, snow began to fall gentle, each flake ordinary, each unique, each sparkling in first bright sun of the new year.